All right, welcome. This is why we got to get off StreamYard. I say every. Hold on, because maybe it's my fault. Okay, that was my fault. I had YouTube playing in the background, didn't even know. Okay, so that was my fault.
Oh,
My bad, StreamYard. My bad. But we still leave. Okay, I'm still leaving. All right, welcome back to the Real Precious Network. Another Tuesday on the Adoptee Foster Show where we say the uncomfortable things out loud. It's Leon and I today, Mr. 3 a.m. The last Tuesday of this month, we're definitely going to have a panel. I'm working on that now. And so we're going to have some people up, and we may have some people who may return. We'll see. But that's what we're going to be doing the last Thursday of this month. So you're stuck with Leon and I until then. Today we're doing a topic. We're going to be covering a topic that I think needs to be covered. I think we need to, definitely have the conversation and dive into our adoptive parents enough. But before we do that, Mr. 3 a.m., how are you this evening?
good. How you doing? Welcome back.
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you.
Getting hot again.
It is. We're back. We're back in the heat wave. We are back to the heat wave. Even though today wasn't that bad. What did you think about today? I don't think that today was.
Uh, it was like 90. It's 82 right now.
It was a breeze. So I feel like it didn't feel as like, like, golly, I need some water. Like, it didn't necessarily feel like that today. But then again, I only went out at lunch, got some gas, got some lunch, went back to work, So, I wasn't out in the heat. They're painting our building right now, the building that I work in. And I'm like, they got to paint in this heat? When I was leaving work, I saw a woman and she had all the paint gear all over her, walking towards the back of the building. It's a long walk back to back there too. And I was like, Lord, girl, I know you hot in there. Like, I know that you're hot in there. They're on these tall, like, movable ladder
Hmm.
contraptions. I don't know what they're called. Just, painting the whole building. And I'm like, I can't even complain. I'm on the inside with the AC. Okay. I'm not going to complain because they out here painting this entire building just as wrapped up as they want to be in this heat. So yeah, we gotta count our blessings when we can. Because in the morning I'm sure it's okay, but when that afternoon hit, and then they be out there all day. Like I said, they was there when I left. So
Yeah, imagine cutting grass out there.
yeah, yeah. But at least cutting grass, you could at least kind of make yourself put some fans, modern technology you can put around your neck. Like they look like they are about to cut down some beehives the way that they're all wrapped up, big hats. It's like, oof, I just feel the heat for y'all. All right, so guys, if you're just tuning in, definitely hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification button so you know when we're going live. Tonight, our topic is Are Adoptive Parents Enough? We have 3 videos this evening that we're going to review, have some discussion around. It's not about pointing fingers or choosing sides. It's about bringing awareness and really doing some deep diving into these videos that I came across, because a lot of times with adoption and adoptee content, you come across the same videos. And these were 3 videos that I have never come across before. And so just wanted to bring it to the platform. So, like I said, so we can bring some light to it and talk to it as adoptees and give our perspective. And I don't know, I may drop the link tonight. I don't know. It wasn't planned. I may drop it for any adoptees, adoptive parents, foster parents, anyone who wants to join the live. I may drop the link, but definitely the last Tuesday of this month, we are going to do a panel, and that is going to be on the 28th. So not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after that.
Mhm.
All right. With that being said, let's get into the first video. This is an adoptee coming to social media, and she's given her perspective on when she realized, or what she realized about being adopted. And I never had this perspective. Maybe you have, but again, I wanted to bring it to the platform to bring light to it, to just have some discussion around it.
Like
Okay.
a moment when I was 12, and I instantly was like, oh, something had to go wrong in order for me to be adoptable. And
Mm.
that's kind of when it hit me.
What happened at 12? What was that moment that you had that thought?
I just remember being at church and thinking, like, just like singing, and I love singing, and just thinking about how much like God has made everybody and loved everyone and has a story for everybody. And I was like, but why does my story seem, which is not true or false, but at that moment being 12 with all these other 12-year-olds, like, why does it seem like I've had more sad things than maybe the rest of my Sunday
Oh,
group? And to be fair, that's not fair to the rest of my Sunday.
In other words, Lord, why am I your strongest soldier right now? Like for real, why do I feel like I've been through battles? Okay.
School group. Who knows what anyone else had been going through, right? Like all of them could have had a lot harder lives. But in that moment, I'm like, ooh, I feel other than in a way that's making me feel sad, not in control of that. And I think that's probably what started that, because it was just like, what a bummer, to realize it. Because my parents never lied to me at all about anything to my knowledge. But they also didn't have any answers. And so I think that made like a pause on some of the conversations, just because where's the conversation supposed to go? Because I remember when I was really little, and my sister as well, my dad told me that when my sister was like 4 or 5, she was like, why did my parents not want me? And my dad was like, well, I think they wanted you, but now you're here with us. Because it's like, what do you say when you don't know anything? You don't want to.
And that's definitely a common theme throughout adoption, is you just don't know what to say.
Villainize anyone, but you don't want to victimize them. Like, I think my parents just did the best with being like, we don't know. And I always tell adoptive parents, like, I don't know is an appropriate answer as long as it's true. I always try to encourage parents with that, because you don't want them to make up a reason that's more harsh. Or people in school would tell me like, oh, well, they were probably just poor because it's Russia. And I'm like, that's really not a great reason though. That's actually a terrible reason to not know who my parents are because of that.
Hey, Rain, how are you?
Hey,
So,
Rain. Welcome.
welcome. So, what do you think about that video? Like I said, I've never heard anyone have that perspective. Um, I don't necessarily, I never really necessarily held that perspective, not to my knowledge. But what do you think as far as being adoptee? Did you ever feel like there was something wrong in order for you to be adoptable?
Um, I think at some point, at some micro level, like you think about where you could have been, or what was the reason, or because you like, depending on how old you are, it it could be numerous of things, right? Like, so I don't know her case, but like in my case, you know, my my mother was not taking care of me the way that she should have, as a mother should have.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I was growing up, I was like, man, I was like, I did wonder like what life would have been like if I wouldn't have been adopted. Like what I now that I know the things that I know, like what would I have made it from that situation? Would I actually be in a position that I am in now
Mm-hmm.
than, than when she was doing these things? And not that I remember, I'm just only going by like what my sister told me, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't remember these things, but just hearing it just gives you a different perspective, right? Like, so like you think about, I talk about this all the time. When you look back and you think about all the things that you've been through, um, it was a script that was written and you didn't know where that script was going to lead you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So,
Very
when
much.
when you were in foster care, you said that you were happy at the place you were and you didn't want to leave. That was just a script closing one chapter and taking you into another chapter. And sometimes, as parents, as adopted parents, sometimes their goal is just to get you to be a adult that is able to contribute. And when and if you do meet your biological family, like they'll have that solace that you are all right, like you made it, you're healthy, you have your life, you built your life, and in your case you have daughters, so like you have somebody that can that can look up to you and that can pattern their life just like you.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree. I would definitely agree. Adoptive parents mean well. They do. They,
Hmm.
mean well. Their intentions. I would say most, because you do hear some stories about some that don't.
Hmm.
Um, but most going in definitely mean well. They have great intentions for the children that they adopt. They want the children to be successful. They want them to be raised in loving homes, family oriented. I would definitely agree with that for sure. But no, I guess because I had my life book, and my life book explained what happened as far as my biological mom. It
Hmm.
never, I I don't even think I registered that her abusing drugs was wrong at that time. But I didn't think it was right either. It was just a fact of my story. Like, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? So I never thought of her. Now I there were times where I would express myself, through written like words about, why did you choose that over us?
Hmm.
And then as I got older, and in my child like mine, she was choosing that over us,
Hmm.
and not knowing that, an addiction is a sickness, and without the proper help and care, you're not going to beat it. There are some people who beat it on their own, but there are some who don't. And so
Hmm.
I never thought of it as a bad thing or a good thing. I just knew it was the thing that caused us to not, stay with our mother. I never thought that anything was wrong with me until I was in situations where it was just like, don't dance, or don't do this, or don't do that. And I'm like, but this is who I am. Like, like I was always like a happy, free, go lucky,
Hmm.
little girl. And, it was when those things were pushed on me where I was just like, okay, is something wrong? Like, am I supposed to be acting a certain way? Can I not dance when music comes on? Is that forbidden? So it wasn't until then, and I still didn't think anything was wrong with me, but I thought it felt like, I was out of place. That's what it felt like, don't do this, don't do that, because that doesn't resonate here, or it's not welcomed here in a way.
Hmm.
So I never really felt like, being adopted, something was wrong with me because I was adopted. I never felt that way. Now, when she talked about her, talking to her dad and saying, hey, why was I adopted, or why couldn't my parents keep me? And they're saying, and she said that his response was, well, I don't know, but you're here with us now. And she said that her adopted parents did the best that they could to tell her the truth as far as they don't know certain things. However, the answer of, I don't know, but you're here with us now. Do you think that really speaks to the adoptee's emotion? Like, what can what do we really get out of an answer like that?
You don't.
Yeah.
Um, Saying I don't know is fine, but actually saying, following that up with saying, I don't know, but, try to explain it in a way where they can understand it, based on like how old they are, right? So, like,
Mhm.
if you're, 10, 11, and you could try to um, explain it in a way where, not to put guilt on your birth parents, but also, you know, notating that they had an issue And the only way for you to have a better life is for you to be adopted. And and that's why you're here now. You have to find a way to massage the words properly to where you're not just leaving that question open ended and not answered.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree. That's why I always encourage, seeking out a child psychologist, because a child psychologist will be able to give you the words that you knowingly don't have, right? A
Hmm.
lot of adoptive parents know they don't have the words, they know they don't have the verbiage. And so there are so many unanswered questions. There are so many doors to emotions that are just left open, and as an adoptee our minds wander. And you don't want an adoptee mind to wander, because what if it never comes back? So you want to be able to, even if you don't have the answers, be able to, like you said, massage those words in a way where, in my case, my mother again abused drugs, but at the end of the day she was sick. And even that life book that we received, I never really remember anyone going over that information with us, like, do you know what this means? Do you understand what this is? And I just remember just reading it for myself and just being like, oh, this is my story. I never really remember even diving deep into, because I have pictures in there of my old neighborhood, my old school. My brother has a picture of me and an old friend, back when I was there. I don't even have that picture. Give me my picture back. So, I have literally memories in there, and a reason why I wasn't there in the homes that I lived in. But again, it wasn't something where it was like, all right, let's go over your life book. It wasn't a conversation. So D-Man Entertainment, good evening. Thank you so much for being here. He says, I'm not sure if I ever asked this question before. At any time in your life, did you ever blame yourself? Leon, would you like to go first?
No, ladies first.
No, I never blame myself. Sometimes I do wonder though, like in my case, in my story, it's like I always wondered. Well, I know the story now, but for my mom to start doing drugs, I don't know her circumstances at that time, and I was her first child. So I always wonder, like, what were the circumstances in your life where it was like, I mean, I know who introduced her to drugs, so I do know that story. I do know that my mother's mother had a problem with alcohol, so I do know that she didn't necessarily raise my mom. My mom only had an education up until the 11th grade, so she never graduated high school.
Hmm.
uh, so obviously she had circumstances where she probably wasn't parented in a loving home. She didn't have two parents to come home to. She probably didn't have any structure. It's North Jersey, so everybody outside, literally. And so there was no, she didn't have a covering. She didn't have, she just didn't have that. But I always wonder, like, where, I mean, my mom was in a bar when she was underage and they would still serve her. These are stories that we're hearing from, the people in our life. So I do know the story, but before I knew the story, I didn't blame myself, but I'm like, wow, like, how did how did this begin? And then, you find yourself pregnant. And in my case, my mom, my mom didn't even, she went out of state. And when she went out of state, she got pregnant. And when she came back to Jersey 9 months later, here I am. So even that was, it was like a little snippet in my life book about my father. It was like, all right,
Hmm.
lived in Florida. He worked on a military base, and she said that his name is this, first name only. So I was like, well, y'all didn't give me a lot to work with here, but Inspector Gadget is gonna find out.
Oh yeah.
And I found out. But so I never blamed myself, but I did have a lot of questions about things just because, I was the first child and then she had 6 more after me. So, just trying to piece together the puzzle is just like, what was going on? Latanya Phillips says, thank you so much for being here, love. She says, I just wanted y'all to know I may not always type in the chat, but I'm watching, supporting the channel and learning from the stories. Well, thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So I can't say that I blame myself because I didn't know, I was a kid, I was a toddler, like,
Yeah.
and then like when you mentioned the life book stuff, and I'm just assuming that's just paperwork that you get, when you're adopted, because like you said, they never went over that with me. Only reason why I know about it because I actually was on my Inspector Gadget routine, and and I found a lot of paperwork. And actually, I just reordered my paperwork. Shout out.
Nice. Coming in. Well, we don't know when it's coming in, but
Supposed to be 8 to 16 weeks, according to the state of Michigan.
Yeah. So the life book. So what you found was the paperwork. You found the paperwork that was drawn up on you and your life book. They don't give you paperwork. In your life book, they don't give you anything to reference to anything pretty much. And so a life book is something that's intentionally done by the agency to give to the adoptee when they're adopted. So they know what their life. And again, I was 9 when I was adopted, 8 turning 9. So, I had a life prior to being adopted. I think just because you were so young, what was it, 3 months, 3 years? We always get
well, I will definitely let you know once the paperwork arrives. So,
yeah,
I assume it's like 2 or 3 years old. That's what I'm assuming.
And your parents, were they your foster parents first?
No.
Or you're not sure? They weren't. So you were
Probably placed into foster care, maybe a few months and then got adopted. I'm assuming.
Yeah, I feel like they shorted you. You should be like, yo, where my life? Here for 3 years. It was my Rain says, Precious, I hope you had a great family reunion. Yes, I had a wonderful time. My dad definitely lives in the country. Okay. But it was a wonderful time at the family reunion, meeting new family members. We drove to Mississippi, met an aunt, the aunt that everyone says that I look like. But we just spent some good quality time together. Today's his birthday, so shout out to him. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
But it was a good time, good food. Everybody was welcoming. There were no fights. There were no, ugly stares. And like I was telling you, Leon, I felt comfortable because I was with my dad. Like, you know what I mean? I didn't feel out of place. Everybody was down to earth. No one was looking at me like, who? Well, there was this one guy that was like, who that? But other than him, everyone was wonderful, and I had a great time. So definitely planning the next trip as we speak. So thank you for asking. All right, so yeah, I definitely wanted to go over that video because a lot of times as adoptees we sit alone in our thoughts, right? It's like, what if this, or am I the reason, or what was their circumstances? We have so many thoughts that run through our heads about our adoption that we don't say out loud and we don't talk through out loud. And so I definitely wanted to bring that to the stage. Now I have another video because again, these are thoughts and questions that come up about our adoption and us just as people and our identity. And when I saw this video, I was like, I have to play it and I want to see what Leon says. And, I definitely want to give my perspective. And, this is definitely going to differ from person to person. Just like we say, adoption is not a monolith. Our stories are similar, but they are not all the same. But when I came across this question, I was like, let's talk about it. Alrighty, let's see what's going on.
Your personality is
I'll rewind it.
Do you ever think about how much of your personality is like a genetic thing and how much of your personality is how you were raised? Because I think about that all the time. Like, I'm seriously wondering if I'm the way I am because my parents raised me that way, or if I'm the way I am because my biological parents, you know? Because I'm adopted. I have no idea who my biological parents are, what they're like.
So what do you say? Because I think, and she doesn't even know her biological parents. So it's one thing if you have met them. That's why I say everyone's reaction and reality to this is not going to be the same, because she's never even met her biological parents to know. And so that's why she has the question. However, and it doesn't even have to just be parents, because you can meet other family members and still sit back and observe and say, oh, we got the same freckles, or we have the same laugh, or do you question this, how much of your personality comes from your biological family versus your adopted family?
No, because I think both can be true at the same time.
Right.
Like you can get certain things from your birth parents, and you can get certain things from your adoptive parents. Like my sister says that, I look just like my dad. I talk just like him. I have the mannerisms like him, but I have the work ethic, all of the different things that my adopted parents instilled in me, and I didn't learn that from him. I learned that from them,
Mm-hmm.
and so you can still, because those traits that you have, you can never get rid of them. They're inside of you.
Yeah.
And so it does amaze me, when my sister was telling me all these things, and I really only met my father once. And so um, you can definitely be have the traits of your parents, that birth you, but I think the traits that you have as, being raised by your adopted parents are really high up there too.
Definitely. I mean, they're going to have to be, right?
Hmm.
Or who's raising you? I
Mm,
agree. They definitely. I think they go hand in hand. I would say the same thing. My work ethic comes from my adoptive parents. Just
mhm,
determination to go after greater things. Discipline comes from them. But I believe that I do have the personality of both sides of my biological family.
mhm,
Um, and sometimes I don't think that adoptees embrace who they truly are because they assimilate or they adapt, especially transracial adoptees and biracial adoptees, right? So, you're raised in a if you're raised in a white family, are you really going to tap into any traits from your biological side knowingly? And I say that because I was watching adoptee's video, and she was saying she was adopted by a white family, and she was saying how she started to feel negative feelings towards black people because she wasn't necessarily around them a lot, and the ones that she were around were affluent black people. And so, anything other than that, it was like, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And usually those who are adopted are in situations where and you're taken from your biological parents, you're probably in less favorable circumstances where you had to be taken away. And
mhm,
so I wonder if a lot of adoptees think about that and they embrace who they are from their adoptive side and their biological side, because just because your biological side didn't raise you doesn't mean that their personalities can't shine through you. Now, if you don't know them, you don't know them. But if you do, it's okay to embrace who you are fully and not feel like you're betraying your adoptive parents, or biological or adoptive family for
Hmm.
being who you are.
Yeah, because I actually wrote a post about this. I think it's coming out this week or next week, where you um you have to forge your own way, right? You can't um like if your father is a mechanic, like your adoptive father, like if he's a mechanic, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can be a mechanic because you may not have those mechanical makeup of you, right?
Right.
Like, and so I knew that I couldn't be a mechanic because I hate working on cars. So I had to figure out like what I wanted to do in life, and I think this is very important when it comes to actually forging your signature and forging, who you are as a person. Like, because when you go into fields where you are struggling, that means you don't need to be there. You didn't pick the right job or
Hmm.
career.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, there are jobs you're going to take just to make money, but like when you're looking at the end goal, which is to have a career where you're happy and where you're stable, like you really have to do research on yourself. You have to understand who you are as a person, what you do and don't like, and I mentor people on this because there's too many times where people pick careers that they are not good at, or they don't look at like money is a big part of who you're going to be in this career, right? Like, so you can't just pick a job and like, oh, I'm going to make this a career, and you only max out, let's just say at 90K. Like,
Right.
well, what are we even doing?
Hmm.
um I'm not saying as a worker that you be a millionaire, but I am saying that you have to actually think about, you have to plan out your life. In your younger stages, you actually have to think about what you want to do. You know, I started in middle school and I was trying to figure out, and I have been in jobs where like I didn't like them or I just couldn't stand them. And I knew those weren't the jobs for me, right? Like, so, and I think, in this lady's situation, um, obviously she hasn't met her birth parents, but her adoptive parents, I don't feel like they gave her enough structure to understand, like, you're going to have different pieces of you, but you're also going to have to blend those pieces to make a better you.
Hmm. Yeah. And I definitely don't fault her for having that question. And I agree with you because a lot of people, you know, sometimes people who adopt have this fairy tale picture of, well, grandpop was a doctor, I'm a doctor, and now you got to
Hmm.
be a doctor. And, that this is a child that you adopted that you're not necessarily forcing this on, but if I think that it's important for parents in general, not just adoptive parents,
Hmm.
but especially adoptive parents, is that's why you have to keep adoptees as a center of adoption, because you have to cater to who the child is wholeheartedly, realistically, and not who you want them to be or the path that you want. That yes, you want them to be successful, yes, you want them to make wise decisions, yes, you want them to have discernment, but you also want them to be true to themselves. And there are so many, especially in the African culture, where it's just like, oh, I have to be a doctor, I have to be a lawyer, I have to be a nurse, I have to, do that. And there are a lot of people in that culture that's like, that's not really what I want to do. I want to be an artist. I want to, and is frowned upon because, African parent be like, the pictures are not gonna pay the bills. Like, they're in love with you, right? So,
Hmm.
you have to really know your child. Just like when you get married in knowledge of your spouse or your partner. It has
Hmm.
to it should be even 10 times deeper with your child, because you know you're raising them and you're having hands-on experience with them. And there are a lot of parents who just don't know their children. They don't know them. They raise them, but they don't know them. And for adoptees, that can be a lonely situation, because you have parents who are loving on you, but they're not loving you for who you are. And so when you're, trying to do X, Y, and Z, and they're like, why would you do that? Why would you choose to do this? Like, why? You know what I mean? You have to then ask yourself, how invested were, your parents in who you truly were. And when I say that, I don't mean necessarily education. I mean the things that you're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Again, especially for adoptees, because adoptees can withdraw. And so you always need something to keep you connected. Unfortunately, the umbilical cord did not connect mother and daughter. The umbilical cord did not connect mother and son. And so you have to find ways to always stay connected to your adoptee. And one of those ways is to be interested in what they're interested in. If you don't show interest in what they're interested in, then yes, they're going to go, veer off and find their own life and find their own voice. But if you're interested in what they're interested in, or even if you don't agree, still show your, give wisdom and give your advice, but be supportive in any way that you know how, because then you won't have to, question why are they off doing that? I told them they should have went to school and da da da. It's one thing to tell your children these things, but it's another thing to, again, be involved and invested. And that means you trying something for the first time and failing and having to go to them crying because it didn't work out. And it's not I told you so. It's just you tried, it didn't work out. It's time to try something else. Simple. That's very simple. Because adoptees need that space to really figure out who they are. They're already going through loss of identity, loss of birth parents, loss of biological connections, could have gone from home to home to home. A lot of foster children who go from home to home to home, there's a high probability that they never get adopted. And so they age out. I saw one video where the girl said that she was able to choose at 14 if she wanted to be adopted or not. Like 14, you need guidance. You need someone in your corner. You need someone leading you and, supporting you, so that whatever direction you choose to go in life, at least you have someone in your corner. But there are a lot of adoptees and foster children who don't have the guidance, who don't have anyone truly invested in who they are as human beings, that they don't get that identity. They can't say, oh, well, I got this from my biological family and I got this from my adoptive family. They're just all over the place. So,
yeah, and like when like at 14, what are we even talking about? Like,
right. How is that even an option?
Because yeah, you're right. Like if you do something and and it doesn't work out, you don't need anybody saying, "Oh, well, see if you did what I told you, you wouldn't be in this situation." You don't need that. Like you need somebody that's actually just going to be there and say, "Hey, it's all right. We're gonna find some other, just finding ways to, like I said, to massage the words to where, you could still lead and still be firm, but like, you know, it's a way to say things, right? And it's a delivery and the impact of the delivery.
Yeah. Yeah, criticism and judgment, it doesn't go a long way with adoptees. It just does not go a long way, because we already feel othered. Like the first girl in the video said, like, I really felt othered, in this feeling of feeling like something was wrong with me because I was adopted. It's like you already feel in the other box. So, judgment, no support, no investment, it just feels like you're further away from
Hmm.
what shouldn't be so far away. in essence. Thank you guys for joining. Those who are watching, I think I see a like on Facebook, so I really appreciate you guys. Hit the like button, share, and definitely engage in the chat. We love when you guys ask questions and have your own perspectives and see things in a different manner when you guys come across these videos. So we appreciate you for being here.
And I will say that daydreaming and drifting off, that's real because I used to do that a lot when I was a kid, you know,
Yeah.
and told you I got in trouble in school for it. But, you know, it's just, you're just trying to, when you're going through it, like, and you don't have anybody to actually help you with whatever that emotion is, you know, you don't, you're just, you're just stuck in a place until you can figure it out, or, you know, or until it just kind of goes away eventually, you know.
Yeah, because genetics don't lie. So, you know, in your body is telling you that your main life source is away,
Mm-hmm.
right? No one is physically telling you this, but your body, your nervous system knows this. Just like for a mother who gives birth, her body knows when the baby is away, because your body is trained to feed a baby every 2 hours. Your body is knows when you're as a woman, your body knows when a baby is crying. Okay, you get sensations places. Okay, it's like, okay, what's going on? Your body knows. You even when you pump breast milk, depending on what's going on with your baby and the distance between you are with your baby determines how cloudy, how clear. It's all genetics, and genetics don't lie. And so,
Mm-hmm.
as far as a personality thing, you are definitely going to have, you know, personalities of your biological family naturally, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so, again, when you're in an adoptive family, it's you have to find things that connect you with your adoptee, because they already feel so disconnected without the words, but left with the feeling of something's missing. Something you know, when you leave the house, you're like, I'm forgetting something. I
Mm-hmm.
know. Did I turn the iron off? Child, did I grab my phone? Like, you know, when you leave the house and you know that you left something back at home, that's how an adoptee feels. Like
Mm-hmm.
something is missing. I left something behind. I don't have everything with me. That's a feeling that adoptees walk around with until they know. Even when they do know, when they're trying to find answers, like you're still trying to find answers, you're meeting new people. And so until these answers are given to you, until you have these experiences, it's going to always feel like something is missing. Something's missing. So it's important to have those conversations. It's important to, like the first video said, if you don't know, say you don't know, as long as it's the truth. And I'm not saying that you have to try and get those answers with your adoptee, but again, that support does help. You know, everyone's story that I heard where reunification took place and the adoptive parents were involved and they were with it, that to me proves that you have a strong family unit where no one feels offended, or no one feels inferior, or no one feels like, you know, I saw one video, I think it was Franklin, where his dad was like, I know my place, you know, like, you know, yeah, we meet your family, but I know I know what I invested. Again,
Mm-hmm.
your return on investment when you invest in your children is that reciprocal love. You know what you've invested, but when you haven't invested those things, reunification, or the questions of why did I get here? Why did my mom, you know, not want me? Or why was I placed for adoption? Those questions come up, and it'll be 10 times more helpful for an adoptive parent to go find those words rather to just give the little words that they have of I don't know.
Yeah, because like when my adopted mom went with me to meet my grandmother, um, you know, she was just like you said, showing support. It wasn't necessarily like anything that she could do or say. It was just, she was there showing her support, in the words of encouragement that she was giving me, like along when we were on the way. She was like, she was like, remember what the therapist said, don't overanalyze it, or don't, just take it for what it is, just be in the moment, and, try to build that relationship if possible, because, I'm learning that, just because um, you're trying to reunite with people, that doesn't mean that they're on the same wavelength as you. They may not want to be disrupted, or they may not know, in some cases, in my case, and a lot of family members. So um, they're still going by that lie that they were told, you know, 49 years ago.
Mhm.
So,
Yep, I definitely agree. And your mom probably had her own feelings, but she put her
mhm,
feelings aside so that you could be in reunification with your biological family. That like, to me, that takes strength. That takes someone who is humble enough to know that this is an experience that my son is going through, and the only way that he's going to get through it is if I go through it with him. The only way out is through, right? So we can't try to beat around the bush. We can't try to, do a little offensive move on it. Like, no, you have to go through it. And if you're not willing to go through it with your adoptee, then that's where we have to revisit the why. Why did you choose to adopt? Because choosing to adopt means I don't know what could happen. And
mhm,
you have kids biologically, you don't know what can happen. But when you got somebody else blood running through your house, you don't know what can happen, right? And so you always want to be not on the defense, but in a seat of, where do I help them along with this? Where do I put my feelings aside to then allow them the space and the opportunity to feel their feelings, to express their feelings, to be able to, just get them out. Like I said, a lot of times, sometimes adoptees just want you to just be there. Like, there were a lot of times where me and my dad were driving, these long country road, child. We just on these long country roads. And there were times where we were talking, and then there were times where we could just listen to the music, sing, and vibe out, and not have to talk. Like, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's just the presence alone. Like, you don't necessarily. I mean, it helps when you can talk to them. It helps when you can open up to them. That definitely helps. But even being able to just sit in silence on a car ride, is golden. Sometimes people sit next to people in silence and got the most anxiety sitting next to this person. It's not even funny, and it's like, we're
mhm.
not even talking. Like, and I feel this crazy feeling in my stomach. Why? And so that's very important when adoptive parents can go through those difficult feelings with you,
Yeah,
because
because
it happens.
um, when I was going through that, or well, I'll say this: I'm very blessed to have met my parents, because they have since passed away,
Hmm.
and I didn't. You don't know that they're gonna transition. After you meet them,
Hmm.
and so that was another sign from the man above. He was like, you need to get this done if you want to be, if you're trying to put the pieces together, you gotta buckle down and do this. So that's what I did, and I didn't know that they were going to pass away, you know, at the time that they did.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, as you get older, I've talked about this before. As you get older, you'll start to discover, like, even talking to the new cousin that I met, right, on Ancestry, even talking to him, he was saying, we have all these, great grandfather had all these kids, but like a lot of them, have passed away,
Mm.
and so, the older folks are the folks with the stories, right? Those are the people that can tell you what's been happening in the family. They can tell you what, if they showed you a picture, they could tell you where they was, what day it was, what they were doing, what they had to eat, so those types of things, you know, you really relish. So, like, I hope you were able to relish that when you were at your family reunion.
Yeah, and it was a lot of the elder uncles, aunts, cousins, and so yeah, um, being able to, and we had a moment like that, going through pictures in the living room, and they talking about, "Oh, this was at so and so wedding, and this was here and this is here." And my dad was like, "I don't even remember this picture," and bringing things back to his memory, and it's just it was a good feeling. Like I was telling you before we started the show,
Hmm.
the feeling of searching for my dad and seeing these addresses and seeing these names, and Louisiana here and Mississippi there, and then actually being at those addresses and seeing those people, and even the
Hmm.
people who are no longer with us, who have gone on, it was an amazing experience. Of I saw it before it was a reality. I was just reading these names. They were literally just names. They were literally just addresses. And now I'm actually hugging these people. I'm actually in their living rooms and at this address that I saw. So that living in that reality before it was a reality is just amazing. And unfortunately, everybody does not get that experience.
Hmm.
Everybody doesn't get the experience of being able to meet their biological parents, or they have a short time with them. Like when we met our biological mom, she passed away in 2016. So we didn't get that many experiences or that many memories with her. And
Hmm.
so having that with my dad is definitely something special.
Oh, I wanted to say something else too. He told me that, when they used to have family reunions, um, the last day of the family reunion, they would sit around and they would they would trace their lineage all the way back, and they would tell stories about how they got here, and like who is who. So, the word of mouth is even more important because, those are stories that, you just can't put on ancestry DNA.
Hmm.
Those are the stories of their lives, right?
Yeah.
So they're telling, they're communicating that, and hoping that people will pass it down.
Yep. Yeah. The true stories, not
Hmm.
not not the ones where people just fabricating and making up lies, child.
Hmm.
Latanya says, for women like myself that can't ever physically have a child, I wish I could have a child, but it's not possible. Feeling less than a woman for years took a long time to heal from that. And I don't think that is actually talked about enough. Women who are not physically able to have children. We talk about it from the aspect of adoptees who are adopted into a family of women who can't. But, that's, to me, that's loss in itself, and that's grief that person has to deal with, because of that, right? And
Hmm.
so we talk about adoption and loss being the beginning of adoption, but for a mom who can't have, or a woman who can't have children, that's a grief that we'll never know. We'll never, be able to
Hmm.
speak to that, but that is a space that we have to hold for those who have adopted us and have gone through, that experience. And that's why I think that therapy is so important. Like, just in general, just everyone should have just in general.
Where's our lifetime therapy at?
What'd you say?
I said, where's our lifetime therapy at?
Yeah, our lifetime therapy, right? It's so
Hmm.
important because it helps you also develop the language for what you're going through and being
Mhm.
able to explain it and express it. Some people can't talk about their pain, no matter what it is, without crying. Some people can't sit with themselves, and so they're always busy and they're always up and they're always doing something. Some people can't, verbalize themselves well, and so they become mute, or they become a person of little words. And so, therapy definitely helps you to be expressing yourself, and someone sitting on the other end, and not necessarily telling you what to do, but observing what you do and giving suggestions, and asking you to consider things, because you don't get that when you're by yourself. Like, a lot of people can't have a come to Jesus moment by themselves. Like, it always takes a little bit of, help. And so
Mhm.
therapy is very important all the way around the spectrum. Okay, so the last video is about, are adoptive parents enough? There was a creator who came on and pretty much is saying, can love, stability, and opportunity alone meet an adoptee's emotional and identity needs? And so we're going to get into this. We've just been talking about two videos, one of a woman who says, hey, I felt like something was wrong with me because I was adopted. Then you have another girl saying, I don't know, do you ever wonder where you get your personality traits from, your adoptive family or your
Mhm.
biological family? Is a mixture of both, which it has to be a mixture of both. I don't think that someone totally sheds themselves of their biological genetic makeup because they were adopted. It comes out somehow, some way. And now you have a woman saying that adoptive parents are just not enough.
Story last night, and I had an adoptive mom come up to me after and say, one of my greatest fears is that I won't be enough for my adoptee. And I very gently told her, you won't be. And I think that that is a huge thing, that if adoptive parents can let that go and realize they will never be enough, I think it can be freeing. What I meant by that, and I explained to her, is that adoptees need to have biological connection, and that can look so different in so many ways. Visits, pictures, medical history. And then, as a believer myself, adoptees need Jesus. They need Jesus to fully heal. And so the best thing adoptive parents can do is connect their adoptee to biofamily in some way, sort, fashion, and to lead their adoptees to the feet of Jesus, where they can experience true healing.
All right. So first, she was talking to an adoptive mother, and she told the adoptive mother, respectfully, you won't be enough. What do you think about that perspective that she gave to the adoptive parent?
I don't agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Two things can happen at the same time. Like, you can have, great parents, but you can also still have and search for that connection. Like, the problem is, um, I think some adoptive parents are entitled.
Mm.
Like,
What do you mean?
so if perfect example, why why are so many people finding out in their 30s and 40s and 50s that they're adopted when you could have told me when I was 10 or 11?
Mm, mm, mm.
And like, I think I sent you this channel. It's called Finding, I can't remember the name of the actual channel, but it's a company that helps people find their birth family.
Mm.
And it was a lady. She had found out she was adopted. And she was like almost 60 years old.
60.
Yes. And this is what I'm saying. Like, people, some, I'm not saying all, I'm saying some adoptive parents are entitled. perfect example is if, let's just say you're adopted and your mother said, "Don't change my name," but they change your name anyway. That is another example of being entitled. They're after their own gratification. This is my child now. I'm gonna do what I want instead of doing what's best for the kid. You know.
What do you what do you what do you call it when you don't talk about um you know why what do you is it entitlement when you don't even talk about the history of adoption in a household and you just go on like it never like it didn't happen? Is that entitlement as well?
Yeah, they're acting like they had you and like you were just away for a while. You came back, and now everything is fine, and now uh, you can get raised. Like no, just tell the truth. Like that's all we're asking for. Like if I was adopted, let me know. Like don't let me know when I'm 55 years old and can't do nothing. It's it, I'm going through this right now where I'm discovering how hard it is. I found my parents probably when I was in my late 20s, early 30s. But then like I had signed up for I think I signed up for Ancestry DNA like in 2017. And I've been searching. I mean, if I showed you my inbox on Ancestry DNA, you would be like you will believe it because you're
I
we're
was going to say you
we're
ain't gonna tell me. We
we
can do boxes.
we we've experienced that, right? Like so um I think people who are afraid to talk about adoption or bring it up, those are people who don't want to face the reality of what's going to come behind that. And they have to know that at some point you're going to want to find your family. Like obviously you can't do it before you're 18, but I think at least knowing or at least having the conversation is way better. Or you have some people that's actually, I hate to say this, they're waiting till their adopted parents pass away and then they actually start to look for their birth family.
Yeah.
And that's sad, because why why can't why can't they have this hard conversation? Why can't they just, you know, own up to, I mean, you adopted the kid, but now you don't want to have the conversation? I don't think that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like, getting a hoagie or a sub and then walking away with just the bread. Like, where's the
Philly
sandwich?
cheesesteak with no cheese.
No steak. Okay. We need this stuff in the middle. But yeah, you're right. It is a sense of entitlement. And sometimes I really don't think that sometimes it can be intentional. Uh, But and a lot of times it's just lack of knowledge. And it's, again, you wouldn't buy a expensive computer and not read the manual on how to work it. And if you did, you would have a lot of hands-on experience on how to maneuver that you've taught yourself,
Hmm.
that you know a little thing or two, right?
Hmm.
You just wouldn't invest in something that you wouldn't have some knowledge about. And the thing about adoption is when you're adopting a child, you do have some knowledge on this child, right? Like you knew that your mom was malnourishing you. Like that is some history on you, which means you needed some attention in certain areas. And that attention in certain areas bleed into other areas as well. Right. And so, a lot of adoptive parents and just parents in general, oh, there's no book, there's no this, there's no that. And us as adoptees, we come with a file. We come with a file. Okay, we in the system. The system has created, like you said, that script for us. And so there is a precursor before you adopt children, unless it is legit a newborn. And even if it's a newborn, you should have some history on the mother, because again, genetically, whatever trauma mothers go through, the baby is going through it too.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever hardship the mother is going through internally, the baby is going through it too. It is literally connected to her. And so, we have to take those things serious, right? She mentioned Jesus. Thank the Lord for the Son. All right. However, we can't, like, Jesus wants us to be wise as well. Like, right. He wants us to be like him, right? So, we can't always rely on a spiritual realm. We got to get busy in the physical realm. We have to say, okay, I know this about you, and I'm not just going to pray it away, or I'm not just going to say, oh, the Lord will take care of that. Or, no, you have to really do the groundwork. You can't just rely on this spiritual realm to clear up confusion, clear up emotion, clear up, not feeling good enough, or not feeling worthy enough, or why did they give me up? Or like, you can't rely on religion to clear all that up. I don't care how many prayers you pray. God is going to tell you, okay, deal with them within knowledge. What do you know? And what you don't know, get to know. Okay, that is what he's saying. But you steady praying. Yes, faith without works is dead. It's dead.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with this the religion part, because
Either.
there, you have to be grounded to actually be able to take in these emotions that you're going to experience, especially when you start to this trying to reunite with your family. Like, you gotta be at a place of peace, because it's gonna be an emotional roller coaster. Like, you're
Yeah.
gonna go up and down, and you got to be okay with like whatever emotions that you're getting, right? Like, so you can be able to um, move accordingly, like whatever that is, right? Like, if in my case, if everyone's ignoring me, and I'm still going to persevere, right? Like, I'm still going to try. Like, no one, you never gotta, you never gotta F for trying, right? Like, so um I'm going to keep grinding until I can get what I need, right? So, and spirituality, yeah, I definitely agree. You have to be somewhat, you know, level headed. But like you said, that's not going to solve all the problems, because adoption is it's a hands-on experience job, right? It's like every day you're in you're in the paint, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Football coach, being a coach. There is no breaks. You don't have no sub buddies.
Hmm.
It's work. You know, and I was just thinking, as you were talking, back to that question, like, if I ever blame myself, sometimes, and I'm gonna be fully honest and transparent. Like, sometimes, when my parents adopted us, they were married and things of that nature, and sometimes I feel like, because me and my brother are two different individuals, and sometimes
Hmm.
I do feel like, you know those who are in Christianity and things of like that nature is like, don't let your children come before the parents, and things like that. And sometimes I felt like my needs were not addressed, because you don't want to, it's not that you're breaking up a marriage, you don't want to disturb a marriage. Like, they're a team. My mom and dad are a team, point blank period. And I'm not saying it's us versus them, But like when you're adopted, sometimes again you have to put your feelings to the back burner to address the needs of this adopted child, because at the end of the day, again, it's not a biological connection, and so you have to find a way to get connected. I'll always say that you have to find a way to get connected to the child, because if not, again, there's either connection or no connection. There is no in between. You can't really have it in between. But I thought about that. Like, did I ever blame myself? Sometimes I blame myself for having the emotions that I have, because sometimes I feel like they're bigger than people actually want to address. It's like, oh, do we really want to go down this road? Or is it going to have us, feeling a certain type of way? Do we have to have these difficult conversations? And I think that, the longer you put off difficult conversations, the longer it's going to take for you to be connected, And so those things need to be addressed often, early, often, because they can become a wedge in the family. And, us as adopted children can see that happening, and then we feel like, oh, well, they're married, they're a team. I'm not even going to, try to say anything, do anything, express myself, because I know that they move as a unit. I know you addressed, how beneficial your mom was there. And I watched the interview that you were on where they spoke about your adoptive dad. Do you think you being well, there was two adopted, you had your brother too,
Hmm.
right? Do you think at times you felt as though your needs kind of were bigger than the situation at times, where it's just like, okay, we got to address Leon's needs. We have to be there for him. Do you think sometimes that got in the way of your parents' marriage?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. Like, um, my mother, she always figured out a way to connect with me. Like you said, like she always. I mean, you're a mom now, so you know, like when when something's wrong, or you like if your daughter comes home and she's not in a good mood, or you can tell like if
Instantly.
you like if she like if you normally say, hey, how's your day, and she's like, or act like she's ignoring you. So my mom knew, like, I had a lot of problems in in elementary, middle school, being bullied. So
Mhm.
my mom, she knew it, and she would always even like actually try to more connect with me because of that. She tried to really steer me in a way where it didn't bring me down. Because that kind of stuff can bring you down. It can mentally challenge you when you're in school. So
Yeah.
I don't think it ever impacted the way that I was raised in and the marriage.
What conversations did you and your dad have about adoption?
Um, we actually never really talked about like adoption, like
Mm.
me and my dad. Um, our conversations were more, he was teaching me like how to become a man, how to you know how to respect women, and how to go about you know being um, handling situations, being emotionally aware and intelligent in certain situations. Knowing how to handle the cops. When you start driving. When they pull you over. This is don't be defensive, and just answer their questions the way that they want. And because we want you to come home, in one piece and not, in a body bag. Um, and so from that perspective, like we never really talked about adoption per se. Um, I more or less talked to adoption with my mom.
Mhm.
And my dad passed when I was 20. So, that was like a couple years after high school. So it's basically, just been me, my mom, and my brother since that time. So, but they have all since, passed away. So,
Mm. I don't. I don't. I think that that's also a dynamic too with the mom and the dad dynamic when it comes to adoption, because I think a lot of times the responsibility of having those hard conversations do fall on the mom. And I believe that if two people are going, I feel like if one person said no in the process of adoption, then the answer should be no, don't adopt. I believe that if you're at the table and there's a whole bunch of what ifs, but we don't know. I don't know if I can. No, don't do it.
yeah, if you got doubts, don't pull the trigger, because that means you're not in it. You're not in it to win
Right.
it, right?
Don't do it. Because the child needs both parents, right? You don't get adopted into having two parents for one parent to do the majority of the heavy lifting, right? And I know this happens in families in general, right? There
Hmm.
are people who are married who's like, oh, I feel like a single mom. You're not necessarily a single mom, but I think that in adoptee situations, a lot of um, the emotional baggage, for lack of better words, because that's what it's going to be until you set y'all free. Until y'all get free, it's going to feel like that. Right? So a lot of the emotional baggage falls on the adopted mother, and in my opinion, I don't necessarily think that that is fair. I don't. I won't agree to that, because again, it has to take two to make a decision to adopt kids. This is not like a push gift. Like, you couldn't push, but we can adopt some kids. Like, this is not a my gift to you because God couldn't give them to you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a dual effort. And especially when we're older, like a lot of times the responsibility falls on the mom, because the babies are small and they need that nurturing and all of that. Child, we was past nurturing, okay? I mean, we still needed it, but you know what I mean? It wasn't mommy daddy days. It was, going to right? And past the innocent stage, right? And so, but I truly believe that it is a two-person job, because emotionally, and I know dads stand in the gap of the heavy lifting when it comes to working, but moms work too. There are adopted moms who work as well. You have to be mindful that if your child is going to see two parents, they're going to need two parents emotionally, because one parent doing all the emotional heavy lifting and there's another parent there, the child is like, well, what you here for? Like, because adoptees, we really don't. I mean, yes, the roof over our head, the clothes, all of that, yeah. But I mean, we go to a shelter and that could be provided for us. It's the emotional needs that adoptees really need to be addressed. And if only one parent is doing that, then you're doing a disservice to the person that you said that you agreed to do this with, because the children will see very, very clearly that this was your job. Your job is to make sure they're good emotionally. This is what you're going to be doing when we make this decision. I'll work, I'll pay the bills. Children can see what is right in front of their faces, right? And so you want both parents to be there emotionally for the children. And in that sense, I would say that, because she says are adoptive parents enough? I would say yes and no, but they would be seen as enough when both parents are doing the work to support them in their emotional needs. They won't. There are a lot of adoptive children who say, I don't need to search for my biological family. My adopted family gave me everything that I needed. I never knew another family. I don't need to meet, other families. Other adoptees are curious. They don't necessarily want to they don't necessarily want to meet their biological parents because of lack. They do it because that's their biological family and they want to know where they came from. They want to know who they look like. But then you have adoptees that's like, well, let me see what the biological family like, because I'm not really feeling the adoptive family. So you have so many different dynamics that the only constant that has been in the child's life is the adoptive parents. And again, I'll use this word connect, connect, connect. I'll use it all the time because you either connect or you don't. And there are so many adoptees who go through the motions because they can't go through the emotions. And you don't want a lot of adoptees out here going through the motions because they can't go through the emotions of it all. And there are a lot who, like you said, wait till adoptive parents die so they can now express their emotions. So now they can finally be real with themselves. And, that has to be a difficult place to be in. It has to be a difficult place where you don't want to disrupt your parents' emotional well-being, but yet you're suffering in yours. I don't subscribe to that at all. You know what I mean? Like, we all got one life to live, and I'm not about to live 10 years or waiting, time ticking until you hit the grave for me to be honest about how I feel about this experience that I'm going through. I don't think that that's fair to the adoptee.
Yeah, I'm a big person like that believes like the conversation needs to happen as soon as humanly possible. Like when someone can comprehend, and they can understand, because finding out when you're 60 is kind of whack. Like finding out that you adopted or waiting till your parents pass so you can actually, like you say, be free, you know. Um, and I put it like this, like I think that adoptive parents are the anchor to your social life, as far as you coming up, going through school, going through middle school, high school, and they're the anchor until you can release that anchor into adulthood. And it is their responsibility to actually give you the information that you need as far as your biological family, you know, in a manner where you're going to want to search for your family and they're going to be there to support you. That's what family do. Like, you shouldn't be finding out when you're 30, 40 years old that you're adopted, because guess what? You might be running out of time.
Yeah, but that's just, unfortunately, that's not something that is considered. And honestly,
Hmm.
adoptive parents that are going to lie to you will never be enough.
Hmm.
An adoptive parent that's going to withhold the truth from you, an adoptive parent that's going to lie to you, an adoptive parent who don't want to be hot, honest, open, and transparent with you, an adoptive person who feels entitled, or adoptive parent who feels entitled and don't want to have the difficult conversations. Unfortunately, they will never be enough, because once you find out the truth, right? Or once you try to have these difficult conversations, or once somebody slips up and says, "Oh, your mom really loved you. I remember when they adopted you. Remember that last show?" Once all that hits the fan,
Hmm.
the connection that you thought that you have just got shattered. If there's a connection at all, it just got shattered. And so, no, it's hard to come back from that. From an adoptee, like, you think regular people be cutting you off and blocking you? Try dealing with an adoptee, okay? Because it's like you didn't have to lie, or we could have had this conversation, or it could have been something. Every because it's a heavy conversation, don't mean it has to be heavy. Like, let's, I don't know, pop some popcorn, or like, play some cards or play a game, and have the conversation. Because the more you withhold the truth, the longer you withhold having these conversations, the longer nothing gets fixed, the longer connection doesn't take place, the longer the adoptee feel, or the further the adoptee feels from you. And so, adoptive parents like that will never be enough, and they could be trying their hardest to be enough, but connection comes in conversation, and that's it. I mean, there are so many people that I connected with when I was in Louisiana just through conversation, right? We didn't have to grow up together. We didn't have to, be on the same basketball team. We didn't have to be best friends in high school. It was just simple conversation where one person is sitting and listening and understanding the other, and it's being reciprocated. And I think that once we start taking, while this is a serious subject and a serious matter, once you look at the other person that you're talking to as family, because that's what you are, right, and not take it so like we back in the courtroom signing the papers to be adopted. Like, come on, like we're supposed to be family here. So if you're family, there should be no reason why you can't be hot, honest, open, and transparent with your family. If there's an issue, there's a blockage there, and sometimes you have to ask yourself why is it so hard for me to address this? Why is it so hard for me to acknowledge this? And if I don't acknowledge it, what is the cost? Because there's a cost to everything. Okay. If I don't acknowledge my adoptees' feelings, what is the cost? If I don't acknowledge the experience that they go through that I'm not going through, but I am going through because I adopted them, what is the cost of me not paying any attention to that? Right? Because it's all fine and dandy when the kids are small. When the kids get big and they have their big feelings and they have their big emotions, you realize that you could have nipped those things in the bud when they're small.
Yeah, because um, I think everything happens at the right time when it needs to happen. If you're being intentional about disclosing this information, right? Like, so if you're, for example, if you're 11 or 12 years old and your parents tell you, um, I think you also need time to like process it, right? Like, so you need time to, okay, like, what does this mean for me? Like, what happens next? What can I do next? Or, are they just disclosing this information so that I know, and then when I get older, I can actually understand what this means. I can, make plans accordingly, depending on, where you are in life, because you have to be at a place where you're going to be okay with the results that you get. And so
Yeah.
I think the first step is the adoptive parents actually disclosing like that you were adopted at whatever age they feel comfortable, but not when you're 20 or 21 or 60.
Right. And you have to also be open to what that, a lot of people just don't know what's going to be on the other side of that door, and that's why they don't do it, right?
Hmm.
But from where I'm standing, you can't be a punk because you decided to adopt. Like, you gotta have tough skin if you choosing to adopt children. And I know we're making light of it and making it a joke, but it's not a process where you going into it thinking like everything's gonna be fine and dandy. No, there are gonna come times where you don't know what you're about to be presented with. And so yes, when you tell them, you have to be open for any range of emotion to come out of that. And which means that that can't be your only conversation about it either. It's going to be a conversation that's going to be revisited over and over and over again, because the child is going to go through life, the parents are going to go through life, and those life experiences are going to just bring on more questions, more thoughts, more, wondering or dozing off or dazing off. Like it's just gonna the floodgates are gonna open, and that's okay. Just don't feel defeated by those floodgates, because again, this is I don't know if this is not information that's given to adoptive parents when they choose to adopt, but it's a reality. The reality is it is best to tell your adoptee early, often, and early and often, but also when you do tell them, there will be emotion there. Your adoptee, like you said, may have to process that, and so now you're wondering, oh well, they don't want to talk to anybody, they don't want to be around anybody, they don't want to, and you may take this as, I don't know what to do, they're withdrawn, and sometimes they do have to process it, and so you ask, are you okay? Is there anything you need from me? Is there anything that I can do to help you in this situation right now? It's a continuous support. Money, great, fine, cool, but when it comes to support, being
Hmm.
interested in what your adoptee is interested in, being invested in the human being that they are, is only when you're going to get the ROI that you're looking for. It's the
I
only time
agree.
you're going to get that return on investment is when you are fully supportive. And fully supportive mean, in this emotional experience that we're going through, how are we emotionally growing through it? Because a lot of people are stuck. There's a development hindrance in a lot of adoptee relationships with their families, because you don't want to take the conversation further to have the difficult conversations to get through those difficult emotions. So you're stuck at, I was adopted at 9. This is the day we were adopted on. Now we're a family, and we're just going to do things that family do. And it's like, okay. What comes from that, right? And there are going to be a lot of emotions and questions that come from that. And it's okay to not know, but it's not okay to leave the conversation there.
Yeah, because when you hit it on the nail, like it doesn't matter how much money you got. If you are not if you are not pouring into me emotionally, um, and it looks different in different ways, right? Like so, um, for example, you know, when I was little, my parents, pretty sure a lot of people's parents, like, Saturday mornings, we used to get up. Mama used to have a Luther Vandross playing. you know, um, I go outside with my dad, and we start cleaning up the yard, and raking the leaves and cutting the grass, and she would come out with the lemonade, and so it's things like that where you're spending quality time, and you're not just being stuck, go look at this tablet, while I go, look at my phone. It's not that kind of, it's hands-on understanding, building life skills. Like, because yeah, I might not have a yard to cut now, but if I'd had to cut grass, I know how to cut it.
Right.
You know, um, I live in apartments, so sometimes when it snows too much, I have to go out there and dig my car out. So you have to learn these skills, and those skills come with love, because they teach you vital skills that you'll need in life. And my mother used to do the same thing, inside the house. So, but my parents were a lot older too, so they had a lot of the old school values, right? They had a lot of the teachings, and the beliefs of, you're you're a kid, you stay in a kid's place, you speak to us, you whenever somebody comes over, you say hello, don't be rude.
Mm-hmm.
You say hello, and then you go, and then you leave. Like, it's not a place for kids to be. This is grown folks conversation. And so that's how, um, you know that you have good values. And yeah, we may not have talked about adoption a lot, but like, they gave me skills that I could never repay them for,
Mm-hmm.
because those are things that, you know I learned, and they were instilled in me. Just like you talked about your adoptive parents, like how they instill certain things in you, and that's how you live your life, and I live my life the same way. I get up and I work every day, and I'm proud to go to work, and I love what I do. And so, it's not like a job for me. So,
Mhm.
um, and I think if a lot of people got in those places where they don't feel like work is like, oh, I got to get up, go to work, you really have to understand who you are, what your purpose is, in life, and how you go about doing it, right? Like,
Mhm.
everything, ain't about listening to rap and, you
Right.
know, everything and about that. And you, when you understand how to become a person that can give to society in different ways, I might not have kids, but this is my way of giving back to the community.
Mhm.
I'm telling my story. You guys are going along the journey with me in real time, and I'm providing the updates, and I talk to Precious on a regular basis, and, I tell her things. There are a lot of things we don't say here because I think some of those things are private,
Mhm.
but most of the things that we talk about, we're going to talk about on the show.
Right. Yep. Rain, let's see what she says. At 10, 11, I think therapy should start immediately. That's an age where information like that out of nowhere could be devastating. Yes, and again, adoptive parents who don't have the language or the verbiage to explain certain things to your adoptee, that's where you take the initiative and say, I don't know how to deal with this, so I'm going to involve someone who does know how to, listen to emotions and respond
Hmm.
in a way um, that separates you from the situation because you're not emotionally invested, right? You're doing a job and you are a stranger out in the street who has no benefit of taking sides. You're literally there a lot of times as a mediator. Um, um, but yeah, it definitely should be mandatory and it should start immediately. Envy me. 405 says my adopted parents were older too. They got married in 95 and adopted me in 1968. By the time I was 12, I questioned why so long before you had children. Oh, that's a that's one where it's like I want to know more.
Mm,
But yeah, all these stories again, none of them are the same. A lot of them are similar, but we share them on this platform, and we have a platform to give those. Hey, Onyx, how are you? We share these stories so others can either see themselves in this story, in these stories, can have different perspectives, where people can learn different things about adoptees. And again, our stories are just our stories. They're just our experiences. We're not trying to tell people what to do, just encourage you to be more in the environment that you have chosen, especially for adoptive parents. If you're going to choose adoption, definitely put yourself in adoption arenas because it will only help the institution of adoption, honestly. Because I wouldn't tell a mother who couldn't take care of her children the first option is adoption. What resources do you need? Where do you need help? Where are you scared? Where do you feel like you're inadequate? Where do you feel like you're going to fail? I need you to be totally honest with me so I know how to help you. Not the state coming in and seeing dollar signs and taking all your damn children away from you.
hmm
Right? So we need people who are invested in the human being who is having these children and not discarding them after they have these children because again you have someone in the comments it's like I can have children, right? And so I'm not sure if that person wants to adopt or not. However, adopting a child it means that the person who could have a child cannot have their child anymore. So it's like a circle of hurt and pain and loss. And so we have to know how to nurture every member in the community. But you're not going to know how to nurture. You're not going to know how to curate these conversations if you never start to have them, if you never start to put yourself in the environment where they're being had. It's okay. Again, it's okay not to know. I don't fault anyone for not knowing. I fault people for staying in ignorance. I'll never fault anyone for not knowing anything. But once you stay in ignorance, knowing that this is an important part of an adoptee's life, and you're not willing to learn and become or have a growth mindset, and you're stuck in this is me, this is who I am, like it, love it, leave it, it don't matter. You're grown, you can no, adoptees will always need the support of those who adopted them because they were taken away from their biological family and the only family that they knew. Some of adoptees like myself went through different foster homes before I even got adopted. And so there's layers to a lot of our stories that sometimes you do have to just unpack. And child, look, I get it. My bag is still packed. I went to Louisiana. So I know that unpacking is a hassle. Okay, I know this because the bag is not lying to y'all. Okay, it's the Real Precious Network. We're gonna keep it real. I know that unpacking is a hassle. So if unpacking physical clothes is a hassle, we know unpacking emotions towards this emotional situation is a hassle. It just is. It's a hassle, but it should be a hassle that you're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, meaning this is going to make us better, right? Going to the gym is a hassle. Your thighs burning after doing all them squats is a hassle. It's pain. It's like, I don't want to get up, I don't want to go to work, I don't want to do anything, but yeah, you go right back to the gym, don't you? And you give it another chance and you give it another try. Well, it's the same with adoptees. You have to flex and you have to work that emotional muscle because that's going to be the strongest muscle that the entire experience is built on, the emotional muscle. And if you don't have that intact, I don't care what type of physical, financial muscles you got in the game, it's like going to the gym and skipping leg day. Like, you know what I mean? You gotta get the muscles. You gotta get the muscles worked out. So,
Yeah, I will say, you know, and I think people who have adopted kids, they should try to surround them or find a community with people who are adopted.
Yeah.
Because, as you all know, I didn't know anyone that was adopted until I met Precious. And I think that's kind of sad. But not saying sad that I met you. I'm saying sad that I didn't know anyone else. I didn't know any communities, until I started doing this show with you. And it's really opened my eyes and it's really helping me in my journey. Not that Rain says F leg day.
Gotta work them legs out, man. Gotta work them legs out. It's not all about the upper body.
Yeah. So, um, you know, I can honestly say that, going through this real time is, you know, it's an experience, but it's something that has to be done. Wherever this journey leads me, you know, it'll be on my own terms and not, so someone else deciding it for me.
Yeah. And I think that, just to circle everything and wrap everything up with a bow, I think just because adoptees go to search for their biological roots, biological connections, whether it be the biological mom, father, cousin, aunt, uncle, it doesn't mean that their adoptive parents weren't enough. Like you said, two things can be true. And so, if they are going through that reunification process, find it in your heart to support them. Support, have conversation. That's where you find connection. Support, conversation, connection. Because the adoptee didn't choose to be in the situation that they're in. And we just want everybody to get along. We don't want to be in the mess, in the middle of nobody's mess, nobody in the middle of nobody's drama, even though we're dropped dead smack in the middle of, both sides.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want there to be any animosity, any drama. I think I remember you posting something about that. Like we're not looking for drama. We're just looking for truth. We're looking for authenticity. And we're looking for people to be honest about their emotions about adoption too, because just because we have emotions about it doesn't mean that adoptive parents don't have emotions about it. But where do they go to talk about their emotions? Where do they go to, have these conversations? You can't go to the people in your family that got their biological kids because they probably fed up with their kids too. However, they have that biological connection. And so they don't feel like a piece is missing, right? It's just like, oh, my kid is getting on my nerves. But when you're adopted, there is something missing there. And you're going to always, whether you're on the adoptee side or the adoptive parent side, trying to figure out, how do I fill this hole? And it's simple. Conversation. Trips to the Super Bowl ain't going to do it. Private school ain't going to do it. The beach house every summer ain't going to do it. That's not going to do it. It's simple. It's conversation. And if you don't know how to have these conversations, again, like we're saying, we encourage you to surround yourself with people who are having the conversations. The conversations don't need to be perfect. It don't need to be a production. It just needs to be a platform where it's going on. And so I'm glad that we are able to gather tonight to talk about these 3 videos, because again, out of a lot of the adoption content that I see online, I'm to know if your person, your adoptive family or your biological family. Another video of a woman saying how she felt as though something was wrong with her, or something was wrong because she was adopted. And then the last saying that, adoptive parents aren't enough. And, we got to stick in reality. Will adoptive parents ever be enough? Like I said, if you have the support and you have the conversation, then you'll have the connection. And once you have the connection, that's all the adoptee really needs and really wants. Anything extra is extra. Envy Me says adoptive parents probably hide their emotions or don't know how to express them, or could say they don't feel anyway. Yeah, and I think it's important to, while we advocate for adoptees, adoptive parents are still in this. We're not saying our feelings matter and yours don't. We're saying, okay, well, if you have feelings towards this, let's talk about it. Like, let's actually have this conversation. Like, we welcome it, but it seems like it's like a conversation where, child, the moon got to be right in the sky. It got to be perfect. It got to be like, it doesn't have to be any of that. And you only feel that way when you've waited so long to have the conversation, right? If you have these conversations when you're younger, they're conversations that you feel perfectly fine having. I think that it's always when people don't know how to do anything, there's anxiety. When people don't know how to do any certain thing, there's a feeling of, I'm not good enough because I don't know how to do this. It's like when you first start a job, you might have skills, at the job, but you don't necessarily know how that job operates. You don't know what their, SOPs are. You don't know how they deal with certain situations. And so you learn the job. You go through on the job training and you're actually paid for it.
It's funny you say that, because I was going to mention that, because when you start a job, they're going to train you no matter where you go. Like, The purpose of the interview is just to make sure like you are who you say you are, and you can do what you say you can do. Because
Right.
but they know that you don't know. Like you're not gonna instantly go in there and be like, "Oh, well, I see this." You gotta observe what's going on, right? And the same thing in adoption. You have to observe the reality of what's going on. Um, I talked about this before. Like, I don't know if my adopted mom, if she felt some kind of way, but outwardly, I didn't detect that when we were talking about it. Maybe privately, she may have been going through some things,
Mhm.
which I understand. I'm not validating that, right? Like, so I do see both sides, because you have to put yourself in their shoes to see, like, well, what does this mean for me? Like, are they saying that I'm not enough and they want to go back to, their parents who actually gave them up? That's not what that means. As far from, I think it's a misconception actually, because we are just actually trying to um, cross the T's on a story that was written well before we even had a say so.
Mhm.
And now we are, taking that challenge and trying to actually finish that book, right? And so all we're asking for, this is perfect analogy actually. All we're asking for is our parents to be the editor in this book that we're trying to complete. We're not asking you to write it. We're just asking you to observe, asking you to be there,
Mhm.
asking for support. You know, the support looks like in many different ways. Like if say for example, if you didn't drive, your parents could be like, "Oh, I'll take where do you need to go? I'll take you wherever you need to go. I'll pay for a plane ticket or whatever the case may be." Right. So there are many ways that you can show support, and still be there. And like when my adopted mom, said that she would go with me, I was ecstatic because, a lot of people don't, a lot of people's parents don't even give them that support, even if you're not adopted, right? They be like, well, just take the bus or whatever. It's so many ways that you can look at this. And I just think that if more people talk about it, if more people actually have the conversation, um, it won't be as difficult as they making it to be.
Yeah. And even if it is difficult, we talking about grown people here. How do you get through difficult times? Like, sometimes you do have to take a step back and observe those patterns as well.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times things are caught and not taught, meaning that you don't have to teach me that you avoid difficulty. Showing me is teaching me that you avoid difficulty, right? And so when you're the adoptee and you're the child in the situation, and you analyze and you observe certain things and you're trying to accept things for what they are, that's one of those things where it's just like, if you can't have this difficult conversation, I'm wondering, how did you have any other difficult conversation? No, I'm being serious. I'm being actually being serious. Like, you know what I mean? How do you work those out? How, because that's another thing that children observe from their parents. You know, you have children that will see their parents bicker back and forth, fight each other down, but in their eyes, their parents, in their eyes, it's like, oh, my parents, really love each other because they're giving each other this energy and X, Y, and Z. But then you have families where it's just like, oh, I never seen disagreement. I've never seen, difficult conversations being had. We never had it. And it's just like, well, how are you preparing yourself for difficult times in life? Like, how are your parents preparing you if they don't know how to have these difficult conversations with you? And it becomes a situation where now you you have this avoidant attachment, right? And again, if you don't go to therapy, if you don't educate yourself, you saying this to a person who has an avoidant attachment may sound like, well, what are you labeling me now? And what am I the problem? And what's it? And it's like, no, you avoid you're avoiding things like that. That's exactly what that is. And so it's again, it's not that adoptees are it's not that we are ignorant to the fact that adoptive parents don't know how to deal with such situations. But again, I don't accept that you stay in your ignorance. Always try to want to learn more about the adoptee experience and don't treat it as I got this all under control. Because again, like Julie said when she was on here, you're dealing with a ticking time bomb as an adoptee. And it may not be a bomb where it explosive device. I don't know what we can say. I don't even know no more. It may not be that thing where, it's anger. It could be 21 questions, just all at the same time. You know what I mean? And it can become overwhelming. And so we just encourage we encourage adoptive parents to really, put yourself in the center of a community that you chose to be a part of, right? If you're going to choose to be a part of the community, bring yourself to that community so that you're open to perspectives and emotions and feelings that are common within the community. And it's not again, we're not choosing sides. We're not trying to say one adoptive parents are bad or anything like that. It's just that sometimes, and a lot of times, your adoptee is not going to speak up about these things because, for one, they don't feel comfortable within themselves or within their environment to actually share the things that are closest to their heart.
Yeah, I mean, like um when I was going to my mom to ask her to search for my biological family, I was trying to figure out what I was going to say, like because that was the hardest part for me.
To your adopted mom or your biological
Yeah, to my adopted mom. I was just trying to figure out like what I was going to say, like how I was going to approach her. I mean, I went through this for weeks.
mom?
Like it wasn't.
You want to take this ride?
And I had so much anxiety
Mm.
just trying to think about how I would approach this, what I would say. So, and the thing that I speak about is that vibe, right? Like that. Is she? Let's see how mom feeling today. Is she? She in a bad mood or is she in a good mood? If she in a good mood, is she cooking? If she baking some sweets, I know she in a good mood then.
Are those brownies?
Um, mhm.
Some
So I think as an adoptee, you actually have to have that intuition from that vibe check, from your parents too. Like you have to know, man, and I'm sure like your mom and dad, your adopted mom and dad, when you can talk about certain things, or when something is wrong, and they know when something is wrong, and so every when you actually have that conversation, that's just one that's just a piece of the step, right? That's just an extra step that you got to make, as an adult. Just like, you know getting your driver's license, just like getting your first apartment or house or whatever, it's just a step in maturity and growth, So, um, I said it to say, just take your time, be who you are, become a good human, and, all the things will fall into place.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to say the uncomfortable things out loud because, you know, I, you'll free yourself that way. You'll free yourself that way. And those who can't handle your uncomfortable truths, how much do they love you? Like, how much do they really love you if they can't handle your uncomfortable truths, right? If they can't sit in that with you, if they can't help you get through that, how much do they truly love you? Again, it always goes back to the why. Why did you do this? Because I couldn't adopt children that I wasn't going to be emotionally invested in, no matter how difficult it would be. You know, it's a decision that you have to go in knowing that it may stretch who you are as a person. It may stretch who you are and the personality that you have. It may stretch you to see things a little bit differently. But if you're going to adopt children, you're going to be stretched in ways you've never been stretched before. And that's just the honest to God truth. You're going to, because you're dealing with someone who is manufactured at another factory. Okay. So we got to realize you got an OEM part with the OCM parents. Okay.
With an export.
Okay. So we gotta realize that it's not going to be as easy as we think it is, but it also does not have to be as difficult as you think
Hmm.
it can be it either. So have those conversations, be hot with one another, honest, open, and transparent, so you can grow in your relationship and you're not just going through the motions and years are passing and you're just calling yourself a family for the hell of it. I want to open the floor to my daughter to ask questions, but I also don't want to open a door that she may not be thinking about. Well, another loaded statement here, because is she adopted? Does she know she adopted? A lot of adoptees are not going to think about the things that should be presented to them in a honest and transparent manner. It's only when you withhold the information and then they find out later on down the line or through a family member where now they're thinking about it and it's the only thing that's on their mind, and they're wondering why they weren't worthy of the truth, and they're wondering why you wouldn't just sit down and have the conversation, right? And so, you know, I always say early and often, early and often. They may not be thinking about it, but the fact that you're thinking about it and you're wondering where, should you open the floor up to questions? Yes, 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 yes. The answer is yes. And if you're having difficulties thinking about how the conversation is going to go or wondering what she's going to ask, um, nothing's perfect, and these conversations will not be perfect on the first go round. If anything, the first go round, you taking notes. You're writing down all her questions. You're recording the conversation. You're being supportive in a way of, I know you have these questions, and this is a first for both you and I. And let's plan to come back together. If there are questions that you can't answer, if there are questions you don't have the answers to, definitely plan to come back together and have the conversation again when you're able to put those words together and have them make sense and it be the truth. Just be there to support when the emotions are flowing and they're uncontrollable and they don't know how to process everything. Just be there. Rainy says mothers want to protect. She said it's got to be scary for a lot of moms to accept that the search to find your birth family because your child could get rejected and hurts. Yeah, and adoptees have to, definitely go in with that mindset as well. I must say I was blessed. I was never rejected on either side, my biological family side or my biological father's side. No one I've never got, I mean, I may have gotten I may have sent messages and they went unanswered. I didn't necessarily take that as rejection, but it could be because I'm in sales and I reach out to strangers every day, literally every day. So I guess I have tough skin when it comes to rejection, or, someone not answering, or that indifferent feeling. A lot of adoptees don't understand that. And so they, fall victim to these feelings and this fear of these emotions appearing real, when honestly, I'm not saying that it's not real, but until you get a concrete answer from someone or a reply back or things of that nature, you can't take things personally, right? I'm not going to say, oh, well, like I was telling you before the show started, when I was at the family reunion, I felt like I saw somebody that was on Ancestry that didn't answer me back. And I wanted to be like, I know you saw my message, but
I digress.
And I'm not going to make a mountain out of a molehill, because at the end of the day, I met my father and that was the goal, right? And so I'm not going to trip over somebody who didn't answer my message. But some adoptees take that to the heart because they are going through this experience in real time and they want answers and they want to be able to connect. Again, it's all about connection. Adoptees just want to connect, right? They just want to connect, and it be a genuine connection, not a forced one, not one where you're, going through the motions and we're here, I'm here, you're here, so we're just going to be here. And it's like, no, there needs to be some type of substance to this relationship. That's why adoptees, when they get into relationship, like there has to be some type of substance, and there has to be something that connects that adoptee to their significant other, their spouse, whatever the case may be. It has to be a deep connection there for them to even want to be there in the first place. Because nothing real. Nothing else feels real. I always say I always say when I get married, I don't want it to feel like adoption, because adoption to me feels like a little bit like marriage in my situation. Doesn't necessarily feel like, we're older now, but it doesn't necessarily fit. We have a family unit, but, I want there to be space where, there's transparency, and not just going through the motions because we sign papers at a courthouse. And a lot of marriages are like that. Like you are going through the emotions because you sign papers at a courthouse, but you can't stand each other, or you're not having difficult conversations, or you're not, getting through emotions. Like I'd rather stay single. I already know what all that feel like. Like I already know what that feel like. So, it has to feel like home in my heart, not a physical place. And so until then, child. Yeah. So any closing words for the show? Because we about to get up out of
here. No, I mean, I think that was some good videos. Actually, the last one was actually a really good video, because that actually, I think people don't really think about that a lot, but it's different. I always say this, it's different when you get older and you look back and you look at the situations, the the decisions you made. Hey, have a good night, Rain. Thanks for joining. The decisions you made in life, or the obstacles that you overcome, you really have to look at that and say, you made the right decisions, and your family made the right decisions, because you wouldn't be where you are if you weren't placed up for adoption. I wouldn't be where I am if I wasn't placed for adoption. You really have to look at it that way. You can't look at, Yeah, we would like to know why, but at the end of the day, we are looking at, where we are in life, and now we can talk about it. We can talk about those experiences. We can talk about, those feelings,
Mm-hmm.
and we can share it with people who may not go through this, or they are not familiar, with the adoption world, and we can give insight and education. That's really what it's, about.
Yeah, I agree. Um, yeah, I enjoyed tonight's show. I think that, one thing that we were talking about in the comments and on stage here,
Hmm.
therapy, right? And therapy is a place that I had to go to for emotional regulation. I didn't find that within my home. So I had to go outside the home to say, okay, how do I positively get these emotions out and then regulate those emotions so they don't overtake me,
Hmm.
so I don't bleed on people who didn't cut me, so I don't take this out on other people. And I think again that goes overlooked. And yes, you can gravitate to these communities and speak to more adoptees, but it's until you do the inner work yourself, the adoptee feels free to do that inner work within themselves as well. I remember seeing a post that says, the parents who don't go to therapy, but the children do go to therapy, is a backwards scenario. Like, parents should go to therapy so they can be better parents for their children. And children should go to, once you become of age, you should go to therapy as well. I think, I'll say it again, everyone needs therapy because it allows you to get the things out that are just stuck in the back of your throat, in the back of your mind, under your pillow. I don't know where you put it, but you're not putting it out in the atmosphere in a positive way in order to get through whatever it is you need to get through. So
Hmm.
after seeing all of these videos, I've concluded that, are adoptive parents enough? If you don't have the support, if you don't have the conversations, you'll never be enough, unfortunately. You'll be going through a process of adoption just to say you did it, just to look like the upstanding citizens in the community. But without that connection, without that conversation, without transparency, without being truthful, you're not going to be enough. Your adopted children are going to seek elsewhere. They're going to seek it out elsewhere.
Hmm.
Before they do that, you want to make sure that you are connecting in a way where these conversations are safe. And the only way you're going to see them as safe is if you come off the defense. You got to come off. You can't be, feeling offensive going into these conversations because we just want understanding and truth. That's it.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. But Tanya, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate you guys for being here. Rain, I'm not sure if she's still in the chat, but thank you so much for being here. Well, that concludes another the Adoptee Foster Show. We hope you guys enjoyed. Definitely like, share, subscribe. We'll be back tomorrow. The Men's Forum, Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll have the men up here tomorrow. Again, there will be a panel, Adoptee Foster panel. Excuse me, the last Tuesday of the month. So not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after that, we'll have a panel of adoptees. Excuse me. Ooh. And maybe adoptive parents, those who have maybe foster. It's open to anyone. So definitely, if you're interested in being on the panel, definitely DM me at the Adoptee Foster Instagram channel, the Adoptee Foster. You can always Instagram or DM me on there to let me know you're interested in being on the panel in 2 weeks. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, be real with yourself so you can be real with everybody else. And don't forget that saying the uncomfortable thing out loud will free you. Okay?
Amen.
See y'all.